Okay, on to notes.
Do we have a test and then the final?
We have a test on Tuesday, and then the final will be the next week. Yeah. The final will be on your Chromebook. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I mean, just like regular math, you'll want to have paper. I'll give you paper, and you'll write things out. What's that? It's multiple choice. Yes, all of it. Yeah. You like that? Good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some definitions first. Only one of these is on your paper, so we're just talking about the rest of these. Standard form of a quadratic, what is that? Let's see. So then on the standard form of a polynomial, so same idea. If I have an exponent of, say, 5, 3x to the 5th minus 11x to the 4th, these exponents have to go in order from highest to lowest. This is just an example. So those exponents have to be in order for it to be in standard form. Same idea as standard form of a quadratic. Okay. You don't have to write this on your paper. Question, can a polynomial have a coefficient of 6i or square root 3? This is a hard question. So a polynomial cannot have either one of these. This is a no. We can only have rational coefficients. There doesn't have to be, but if there was, you'd put it there. Yep. But they still have to be in order, 5, 4, 3, and then the next highest would be the x. Good question. Yeah. Yeah. So just because it was so big, I just ended up skipping. So we cannot have coefficients that have an I or a square root. They have to be rational numbers. What's a rational number? A rational number is something that can be written as a fraction of 2 integers. So an example would be 8/3. Okay, I could not have a square root in there, and I cannot have an I in there. It will not. That means it's not rational. Okay, could be -5. Those are examples of rational coefficients. So conjugate roots. This one is on your paper, so you're going to write these down. So some of you may have seen a pattern already. So if we have square root of 5 is 1 root, anybody have any idea what another root might be? I guess so. It's going to have a square root. Something with square root 5. Negative square root 5. So what it is in order for us to be able to have coefficients that don't look like this, these have to come in pairs. And so what happens is when we multiply them together, then they cancel those out. So this is one example. Another example would be, say, 3i and what? -3i. Negative square root 11 and what? Positive square root 11. Okay, this one we have not done one like this, but we can have terms that look like this, say 5 minus square root 2. Anybody have any idea what the conjugate for that would be? What's that? 5 and plus square root 2. And you could change the sign on the 5. So it turns out they're not always necessarily just opposites, because if they're more complicated, they look like this. It's just something that when we multiply those together, it gets rid of that radical. So those are examples of conjugate pairs. Okay, so let's do the notes. Everybody still looking at this? Okay, 6 and negative 2i. We want to write a polynomial function with rational coefficients that has the following zeros. Find all additional zeros. So any idea what an additional zero might be? This is the key. There. 2i, that's right. So 2i would be my additional root. We would not have an additional root for the 6. That 6 is not an I or a irrational number. So we don't have a conjugate pair for that one. It's just 6. Did anybody notice that when we were doing some of those? Sometimes they came in pairs, sometimes they didn't. Okay, what about number 3? Any additional zeros on number 3? Negative 8i and negative square root 7. That's right. So there's 2 of them on that one. Are there any additional zeros on number 4? No, none. No additional zeros because they are just integers. So we're good. Go ahead and find the additional zeros on you try. Should be really quick. So we're taking just of these two, the one that has the I, and then it's called irrational, the square root, taking the opposite of those. Okay? Good question. Can I see your answer to your you try? Good job. Yep. So we're just looking at the ones that are the I or the square root. We're taking the opposite of them. But it's a square root, so we're taking the opposite of square root 3. What's the opposite of square root 3? Negative square root 3. Yep. Good job. So your answer should be negative square root 3. Questions on that before we go on to the next one? Okay, easy peasy, huh? Not too bad. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to write this in factored form. So if 9 is a root, what will the factored form be? X minus 9 or x plus 9? X minus 9. So if we took that x minus 9 and set it equal to 0, when we add 9, we get x equals positive 9. So what's my second factor on this one? X plus 2, that's right. Questions on that? Okay, so what would be our factors on number 7? Well, first, actually on number 7, are there any additional zeros on number 7? Negative square root 7, good. So what would be the zero, or excuse me, the factor for 0 as a root? X, that's right. It's going to be x. Okay, did you hear that? X is the factor when 0 is the root. Questions on that? Where we got that x? Okay, a lot of talking going on. Thank you. So what were my other 2 factors? x minus square root 7 and x plus square root 7. That's it. Not too bad, huh? Any additional factors on number 8? That's right, negative I. Nate, do you want to tell us what the factors are? Uh-huh. X plus, uh-huh. Yes. So order is not important. We like to put these two next to each other, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, go ahead and do the U try. Yes. So because it's a 0, we have a variable. So you can use any variable you want. We just usually choose x.
There's only a 0 here though.
You're right. So so where are we getting just the plain x?
Yeah.
Or are we getting where
Like here.
so I see how I wrote x minus 9 is 0?
Yeah.
That's how I get x equals 9. So x minus 9 is the factor. So for every one of them, yep, every single one.
So for this one, would it be x plus 3 and then x minus negative 5?
X minus square root 5 and x what?
Plus 3?
Yeah, good.
No, but what if we do it plus 3? X
What?
plus 3 and then
Yeah, yep.
Well, you can wear any. Take it to the restroom.
So just show me your mango first. Good, that's good. Great. So this one, because of the 3, I like those two. Perfect. This would be x plus 3 or x minus 3? Yeah, this should be an x plus 3. That, because it was a 0, that's why we have the x there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this should be your answer up here. Any questions on that? Moving on. Okay, this is where it's going to get a little harder. You want to pay attention to this. Okay, so first what we're going to do to write the polynomial in standard form is we're first going to write it in factored form. So what would the factored form be for this one? X minus 8 times x plus 5. We want to write that in standard form. Is that standard form? No, that's factored form. So what do we do to get it in standard form? Just multiply it out. So Kaden, will you multiply that out for us? Good. So as Kaden did there, we want to simplify that. Questions on that? Okay, so on number 2, or excuse me, number 11, cross out this -1. We're going to make it simpler. I'm just changing this problem, no -1 there. So the only two roots that are given are 2 and square root 10. Is there any additional roots here? Negative square root 10. Okay, so what is our factored form here? I'm going to put the minus square root 10 first, and then x. How do I write this one? How do I write the factor for negative square root 10? Plus square root 10. And then my last factor for the 2 will be x minus 2. Okay, big hint here and big suggestion. You want to do this. Listen. So you want to multiply these first because it will be much easier. What's going to happen is there's going to be something that happens with those square roots. So let's see what happens when we multiply it out. Emma, would you do that for us? So Emma P, thank you. Sorry, there's 2 Emmas. Uh-huh. Hey, son. I'll put the x in the front. Good. It's just clearer if we put that in the front. Yep. I know that's the hard part. What did you say? Yes, so negative square root 10 times negative times square root 10 would be negative square root of 100, which is what? Negative 10. Does that make sense? So what happens to those middle ones? They cancel. So we get x squared minus 10 times x minus 2. And then we're going to multiply those two. We're not done, right? We still have to keep multiplying. So x squared times x to the third, x squared times negative 2. Nick, can you tell us what we get for that?
Wait, which one?
The x squared times the negative 2.
Oh, minus x squared. I mean 2x squared.
Thank you. And then, oops. And then that one. So then minus 10x. Sorry, x cubed minus 2x squared minus 10x, and then plus 20. Does that make sense? Okay. Last example. This one's going to add a new twist. Are there any other additional zeros? And I, that's right. So we're going to write it in factored form first. I'm going to put the i's first, x plus I, and x minus I. And then what's the 3? X minus 3. Questions on that part? Because you have to have that to be able to get it into standard form. Okay, so now we're going to multiply. Once again, we're going to multiply this part out first. It makes it much easier. Oops, Go back to the coefficient, a leading coefficient of 2. Where do we put that leading coefficient of 2? What does that mean? Ladies. So where do we put the 2? That's at the very front. That's right. We're going to put the 2 in the front. So it says leading coefficient, so we're putting the 2 in the front. Okay, so now we're going to multiply these 2 out first. And what would we get when we multiply these 2 together? X times x is x squared minus ix plus ix and minus I squared. So we want to simplify this next. The negative I squared, how does that simplify? Opposite of negative 1, since I squared is negative 1, so this gives us 1. So this would be 2 times x plus 1, x squared plus 1 times x minus 3. Follow me so far? I know it's kind of tedious. Okay, multiply it out for me. Let's see. Omar, can you do that for us? Frankie? We're going to leave the 2 alone. We'll do that last. Good. Yes. So now let's simplify it already. And then what do we do with the 2? Just distribute. So we're just going to distribute the 2. So we get 2x to the third minus 6x squared plus 2x minus 6. And that is your answer. I'm gonna have you do one of the problems on the homework rather than doing the U-try.